After being transferred from the headquarters to a branch office, I moved into a rundown apartment. But in the next door of that rundown apartment, I've witnessed something I can't believe. My name is Rick Johnson, 30 years old. I'm just an ordinary office worker who was transferred to a rural branch office last month. It's a fairly decent company with a large building in New York as its headquarters, but one day, I made an error at work and was held responsible for it, resulting in a demotion. Despite the mistake was indeed partly my fault. I honestly think that making me solely responsible isn't right, but that's what I think. After all, I'm just an ordinary employee. I have to accept that I've become the company's sacrificial lamb, the scapegoat. Besides, the headquarters was a very tense environment, all about results and promotions. On the other hand, the rural branch office is more laid back. So in a way, I feel fortunate for being transferred. Well, that's the way I started to think after a month of the move. Hence, I guess you could say my life is going pretty smoothly. That's what I'd say. In the end, everyone has some troubles in life. Clatter, bang. Seriously, it started again. As I was transferred to this countryside, I rejected the company housing and instead chose to move into this rundown apartment. I wanted to avoid meeting my coworkers in private as much as possible. Growing up in a single-parent household, I was used to this kind of shabby apartment with only 8 units, but due to the condition of the apartment, there's bound to be some noise. And now, the noise from the corner room next door is bothering me. Luckily, I live on the second floor and the corner room on the first floor is vacant. So basically, I'm the only one affected by this noise. And that's why it seems that no complaints have been lodged against my neighbor, so far. I remember a young woman was living next door. Similar to me, she moved in last month and has come to greet me before. She seemed polite and gentle, but bang, thud. I never thought she would be the type to make such a racket. It doesn't occur every day, but about twice a week. The sound is so tremendous, it's like she's practicing wrestling or something. Well, humans do make loud noises from time to time. So at first, I only thought she was struggling with getting used to her new life or unpacking after the move. But for it to continue like this, it's really something. However, I want to avoid neighborhood trouble, and it's not like the noise happens every week. What's the best way to address this without causing tension? As I was wondering about that, something unexpected happened. Enough. Stop it. Get out. For the first time, I heard my neighbor scream. The scream surprised me, and I braced myself, thinking it might be a serious fight. It was such a loud voice. And in midnight too. What on earth happened? I'm sick and tired of this every time. What did I do? Get out, you. Stay away. Somebody help. What? Do I need to call the police? But even if I do, it will take time for the police to arrive after reporting it. What if something happens in the meantime? I felt as if my neighbor was calling for help, so I immediately went outside and knocked on her door. It's Rick Johnson from next door. What happened? Is everything okay? I called out, but all I could hear from inside was the sound of frantic wrestling. This is seriously bad, isn't it? I panicked, quickly grabbing the doorknob, and, to my surprise, the front door was unlocked. Without a second thought, I opened the door and went inside. But then, eek, whoa, the sight that met my eyes was shocking. A woman lightly clothed wildly waving a bath towel, and there's a mysterious black creature flying around the room. Could that be a bat? It's not uncommon for bats to invade homes in the countryside. There are even professionals who specialize in removing them. At first, the woman seemed surprised to see me, but she was more focused on dealing with the bat. Please help me with the bat. Sure. Bats are protected by law, so you can't hurt or capture them. On top of that, they are pretty fast too, so it's hard to keep up with them. Maybe the bat was surprised by my presence, but it started to fly around more erratically, and I quickly grabbed an umbrella from the entrance to block its path. Then I managed to successfully push it out through an open window. Phew, I've dealt with them occasionally back home, but I never thought I'd encounter one here. Thank you so much. The bat was gone, and the woman, who is still very lightly clothed, bowed her head in gratitude. Her name was Kathy Miller. She told me that a bat had invaded her home after she got out of the bath, and she exploded in anger as they seemed to come every week. Because I was uncomfortable with her clothing, I ended up promptly excusing myself. Since it was awkward for both of us to visit at night, Kathy came by later with a gift of sweets. I really appreciate your help. I'm sorry if the noise disturbed you. It's fine, but those bat troubles sure were a terrible misfortune. According to Kathy, the bats come nearly every week, and she was struggling to figure out what to do. I can't find any possible entry points, and even if I open the windows, I make sure to keep the screens closed. Somehow they always find a way. Oh, bats can enter through a gap as small as half an inch. What? You might want to check if there are any holes in your screens. They used to come into my family's home through holes in the screens too. Like I said, bats used to appear in my home as well, and Kathy was very pleased when I offered her some advice on bat prevention. She is an attractive woman, and as you know, for seeing her in that kind of clothing, she has a great figure too. Her beautiful long hair reaching down to her waist really suits her. So, it does feel nice to make a woman happy, and it makes me want to be a little meddlesome. From then, there was no more noise made from Kathy's room, and we started greeting each other occasionally when we passed. But still, why would a young woman be living in such a shabby apartment? She seems a little careless, but she should be young, perhaps a student. Does she want to save up as a new graduate? That's really an individual's issue, so I shouldn't say too much, but I can't help to worry. As I was secretly concerned about her, life had various connections. Amazingly, this year, Kathy was assigned to my company as a new hire. New hires train at the headquarters for 1 month and then are moved to the headquarters or branch offices depending on their abilities. So, the new hires arrive a bit late every year, but I never thought Kathy would be the one to come. She's young, and I thought she might be a student, but apparently she's a new graduate. It's sad for a new graduate to be assigned to a place like this, but the personnel decisions are out of her control, so I guess it couldn't be helped. I never thought you would be in the same department. I was surprised too. Nice to meet you, senior. Please drop the senior. I've only been on assigned for a month yet. Though I'm her senior in the working field, as branch employees, we're still in the same year. And the fact of being neighbors, this is a kind of strange relationship. But if she's an employee, why live in such a rundown apartment? I wondered, but it's not right to ask about personal matters. As long as her private life doesn't interfere with her work, it's fine. After that, Kathy and I often worked together. Rather, we mostly acted as a pair. I may be new to the branch, but I have a lot of work experience, so I was her mentor in professional matters. I taught her how to hand out business cards, send emails, and things like that. Kathy was very serious about her work. She would come to me with questions right away, and always showed her gratitude. She's very cheerful too, so she became popular in the department right away. But popularity doesn't necessarily mean she's good at her job, and Kathy makes many careless mistakes. Small errors like inputting wrong numbers or checking issues. Even though she's careful, she doesn't seem to get over it. I'm sorry for always causing you trouble. It's fine. I think I'm starting to know where you often make mistakes, so if the two of us are careful, We'll be fine." 6 months have passed after joining the company. Kathy and I had become good friends, having lunch together and going out for drinks occasionally. Well, after all, we lived next door to each other. Since that bad incident, I was able to gain Kathy's trust, but because of that, she sometimes overblames herself for her mistakes. Sure, there were some nearly significant mistakes, but luckily, I caught them while checking, and if we can prevent them in advance, that's fine. Doing our best, and not making a mistake next time. Sometimes, that pressure induces even more mistakes, and I want Kathy to relax more at work. So I tried not to be overly critical. But for others, my guidance appeared overly lenient, and before I knew it, there were murmurs that I was treating Kathy too gently. Because I don't guide her properly, she never seemed to fix her mistakes. At least, few people seem to have that idea. When are you going to get over your student mentality? I'm sorry. When I returned to the office in the late afternoon after a meeting with a client, one of the senior managers was yelling at Kathy. I rushed over to hear the story, but was dismissed with "It's none of your business." Apparently, she had made a small input error and was being scolded. The mistake itself was no big deal, and there was no need to yell like that. I honestly thought it was too much. Of course, it's unavoidable to scold someone for making continuous mistakes. But some of the words from the senior manager were excessively offensive about Kathy's characteristics. Obviously, I stepped in to stop that, but Kathy seemed very down, looking pale. That day, me and Kathy left work together, but I could hear Kathy crying in her room. I'm such a fool. I didn't have the courage to scold her and made excuses for it. I didn't want her to hate me or feel distant from me. We coddling her like that ended up causing her much more pain. I should have been the one to say it. You need to be more careful, watch out for mistakes. Me believing that I could just cover up her mistakes, that's incredibly arrogant and also rude to her. I realized then that I had been stifling her opportunities to grow. I spent the night in a greater shock and regret than when I was transferred to the branch office. Then, a week had passed. Even after a week, Kathy's face was still pale. She was clearly pushing herself too hard. Without a moment of relaxation, she continued to check her own work and mistakes. The cheerful smile that had brightened the department was completely gone. Even if I tried to talk to her, she would avoid me, probably because she didn't want to bother me, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry right now." In that way, Kathy was working hard, but she was being called out by the senior manager almost every day, having her mistakes pointed out, and being abused. I guess it's supposed to be guidance or something, but every single day, he continued to yell at her, treating her quite horribly. I did try to stop it, but the senior manager wouldn't try to listen, insisting, "This is guidance, and if such days are repeated, a person will eventually reach their limit." Sure enough, Kathy suddenly started crying quietly during work. She didn't intend to cry, but probably couldn't stop herself. Thinking that crying will solve anything, typical of someone whose brain is still like a student's. What? I couldn't believe my ears. Wait, what is this guy saying after pushing her this far? It's impressive how you can belittle people as easily as breathing. You can do it without a second thought. Before I knew it, I was saying such a sarcastic thing to my senior manager. My senior manager glared at me and came saying, "What? Did you say something, Rick?" But I couldn't stop. I said, "It's amazing how you can live without any guilt after pushing her this far." "What did you say?" My senior manager grabbed me by the collar. I knew that he had been worried about his poor performance lately and was under a lot of stress. But that doesn't mean he should take it out on someone else. Sensing that things were getting out of hand, others stepped in to stop him, and Kathy and I were ordered to go home for the day. Kathy was crying the whole time, but also stayed expressionless. In that moment, I finally realized that something was seriously wrong and urged her to take a leave of absence. "I want you to rest for now. I'm sorry that I couldn't help you until it got to this point." Rick. Kathy was still downcast, and she soon went on leave. A few days later, for some reason, I was called to the headquarters. Maybe they reported the trouble I'd caused at the branch. Above all, I'm an employee who was demoted from the headquarters after making a mistake. I don't believe the company would forgive me after 2 misconducts. I guess I'll be fired. But that might be okay. It's better not to have someone who can't even protect a junior colleague who admired me. With that thought in mind, I knocked on the president's office door with trembling hands. "Come in." I opened the door to the president's office, nervous at the sound of the president's voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time. But there. Wait. Kathy. I saw the president sitting in his chair and Kathy sitting hopelessly on the sofa. Despite I was in the president's office, I was completely shocked by her unexpected appearance and raised my voice. "I mean, she was supposed to be on leave. Why is she here?" As I stood there stunned, Kathy looked at me and said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I'm the president's daughter." The president's daughter. And wait, more importantly, are you feeling okay? I was more concerned about her being in this place than the bombshell she had dropped. She looked very exhausted, and it would be better if she took some rest. So, without thinking, I blurted out those words, and Kathy smiled faintly at me and turned her eyes to the president, her father. "I told you, Dad. Rick doesn't care about titles or anything like that." "That seems to be the case, Rick. Thank you for protecting my daughter. She told me everything. You stood up for Kathy, didn't you?" "No, I didn't protect her. I couldn't help her when she was suffering." I dropped my head to what President said as her father. But it was Kathy who denied what I've said. "The doctor said it was okay because you got me to the hospital early. It's all thanks to you for recommending me to take a leave. I would have gotten mentally ill if it had been a little later." Really, mental illnesses are difficult to cure and can easily recur. I was really worried about Kathy's mental state. Thus, I was relieved to know that she had been properly examined and has managed to avoid falling into depression. Following my relief, I finally started to have various doubts and questions. The president have answered all of them for me. First of all, the reason why Kathy started working at the branch office was because she wanted to hide her identity as the president's daughter. However, it's a rare thing that a normal newcomer starts to work at the head's office. Hence, she used her mother's maiden name and began working at the branch office. Although, on her document, she still had the same last name as the president, so there were few people at the office who knew her true identity. As for the rundown apartment, it was because she wanted to live alone and refused to live in the company's housing. She ended up choosing the property without the help of her family. Well, they probably didn't imagine that bats would come out. And about the mistake. After investigating, we found out that your boss intentionally changed the data and scolded Kathy. As the frequency of mistakes were so high, the people in the department were starting to feel suspicious. In other words, the boss was deliberately framing her and treating Kathy harshly. Later, it was found out that the boss was suffering with his poor performance at that time. On top of this, his family life wasn't going well either, which had reached to the point of divorce mediation. Due to this, he was under a lot of stress. In the midst of that, Kathy was assigned to the department and quickly became popular. It seemed like he was feeling jealous of her. While he was struggling with his life, Kathy was young and pampered by others. He was unable to tolerate this situation. As for the punishment of the boss, we'll take care of it. But as a father, I have a favor to ask of you. I want you to help Kathy's return to society. The president said as he bowed his head. This is something that should never have happened, and the emotional damage Kathy has suffered won't heal easily. Unfortunately, many employees at the headquarters know she's the president's daughter, but you cared about Kathy even after you knew her true identity, and didn't even mind. You are the only person I can trust. I know it's shameful, but please." As a father, he wanted to help his daughter to reintegrate into society. I could imagine his feelings. I glanced at Kathy. Would I be good enough? No, there's no need to think about it. I've been regretting it all along, haven't I? That I couldn't protect Kathy. I don't want to feel that way again, no way. If I'm good enough, please let me help you. In this way, I was transferred back to the headquarters with Kathy and acted as her supporter so she could return to work without fear. At the headquarters we worked together, and when Kathy made a mistake, I pointed it out. I also acted as a stopper so that Kathy wouldn't work too hard. As a result, while receiving counseling, Kathy gradually increased her attendance, and a year later, she was able to return to her normal life. It was her hard work that allowed her to recover in a year. At first, I was very worried about how she still cried at night and always seemed down, but I'm really glad she came better. Why did I know she was crying at night? Well, that's the thing. Kathy and I started living together. You see, we both moved from the countryside, and Kathy would get anxious at night, so... Oh no, at first it was like half living together situation, you know. When we first moved, we obviously had separate apartments. But Kathy would often call me at night, and I was also worried, so I ended up staying over a lot. As I spent more nights at Kathy's place, I gradually left my stuff there, and before I knew it, we were in a half-living together situation. But that was kind of half-hearted, so I made up my mind. I was so determined that I begged my boss, saying, "Please let me protect Kathy," and got permission to live together. And then, when Kathy was fully recovered, I proposed to her. We submitted our marriage paperwork last month and officially became husband and wife. Good morning, Rick. My everyday begins with seeing Kathy's smile. I thought it was the end when I was transferred to a countryside branch office, but thanks to that, I met Kathy. In a way, I'm thankful for the bat that flew into a room that day. Anyway, right now I'm having the best time of my life. And I know I'll never make Kathy cry, never again. As I deeply promised myself, Kathy and I start heading to our office together. Being the next CEO candidate is surely a busy role. What did you think of this story? Subscribing to the channel will become a great encouragement for our next production. Well then, see you in the next video. My name is Patrick Sullivan, turning 29 this year. I'm a single white-collar worker. I have a childhood dream. That is to marry a lovely lady and establish a happy family before I turn 30. When little girls say that their future dream is to become a wife, everyone raises voices saying, "How cute." But I wonder why people get taken aback when a man like me puts my desire for marriage out in the open. My parents are as close as they could embarrass me. When I go home, they treat me almost as if I'm intruding. Watching such parents growing up, I came to sincerely wish to find my lifelong partner and marry soon. I was supposed to get married much earlier, but everything has ended in failure. I'm amazed by how strong your desire to get married is, Patrick, says my senior at work, Mike Anderson, as he smokes a cigarette in the smoking area. Mike and I work at a major printing company. Mike's in sales, and I'm in the design department. We're in different departments, but we're close enough to call each other buddies. I respond to his sales with my designs. I think we probably have similar sensibilities. We communicate well with each other, making work easier. Also, the tasks that Mike brings in are often challenging, providing me with good stimulation. Exchanging information at the company smoking area has become a daily routine for us, who hang out both in private and at work. There's nothing wrong with it. Just before my goal of turning 30, I'm also desperate to make my dream come true. A party I attended the other day also ended in failure. The reason was Mike. He's so handsome that he gathered all the attention from the ladies at the party. I even asked him not to come to the party once. Well, it can't be helped. I'll introduce you to a special girl, but I'm going to tell her in advance that this is for marriage. Is that okay? Mike said while exhaling smoke from his cigarette. I've known him for a long time, but Mike has never introduced a girl to me before. It was a surprising turn of events. He must have felt sorry for me. If you're introducing me a girl, Mike, I'm sure she will be a beauty without a doubt. I'm looking forward to it, I responded. At my words, Mike raised one of his eyebrows in a slightly boastful way. Hey, you two, how long are you taking for a smoke break? You're still on the clock. Stop slacking off. My direct supervisor, Johnson, yelled from across the smoking area. He's the head of the design department, but he doesn't carry much authority. He's been experiencing a series of defeats in competitions recently, and he's not very well respected within the company. Mike and I are a team with one of the highest sales records in the company. There are many who are envious of us. Johnson is one of the biggest of them. Well, no matter what the reason, it's not a good idea to be targeted by the boss. I quickly stubbed out my cigarette in the ashtray and put it out. Mike, I'm counting on you for the introduction. We can go into details later. I said that, then left the smoking area. Mike gave a casual sure, raising one hand. He quickly started fiddling with his cell phone, which made me think he might be contacting the person he's introducing me to. Thinking about that makes my heart swell with anticipation. I can't help but hope that this time, the fated encounter is waiting for me. My chest was filled with hope. And then, the very next moment, I hit rock bottom. On the conference table, there were shop cards and postcards for the new line of a major clothing brand I had designed. Standing in front of me were the division chief and Johnson. Can you explain what happened here? It was a mistake in color correction. Apparently, there were changes since the time I had a meeting. No report had come up to me, the main designer. In fact, there was no evidence that a report had come up to my team at all. I didn't receive any reports about changes in color correction. I clearly stated, being blamed for something I have no memory of didn't sit well with me. It doesn't matter anymore. How are we going to deal with all these that have been printed? We don't have time to make new ones. Who's going to apologize? None of that matters now, said Johnson. I thought, it does matter. But I also realized that we didn't have time to argue if we wanted to minimize the impact on the client. Regardless, our only option is to reprint. I insisted, but the printing presses. Johnson began. He was trying to say that the press wasn't available for reprinting. It was his job to sort that out. Just then, the conference room door was flung open. I got the printer. Hurry up with the design. Mike's head popped in through the door. He had apparently sprung into action as soon as he heard about the incident. What a reliable senior he is. Prompted by Mike's voice, I quickly grabbed the new color correction data and sample, then hurried to my team's desk. You're going to take responsibility, Johnson shouted after me as I darted away, repeating it like a broken record. The fact that we managed to get the client to delay the delivery date by 2 days was all thanks to Mike's efforts. But Johnson seemed to be reporting all the credit to himself. It was typical, but still bothersome. The remaining issue was the misprinted deliveries. Who was going to take the fall for this error? It seemed to be me to take responsibility. That day, as I was frantically working on a new design, it seems Johnson reported to the upper management, including the director, that the error was due to my oversight as the team leader. Johnson insists that my signature was on the color correction document. By the way, that document is currently missing. Now that this whole commotion is over, I am being asked to voluntarily resign at a meeting in the CEO's office. Voluntary resignation. I couldn't help but repeat it in surprise. The reasons given were the extensive damages caused to the company and my inability to follow the basics: reporting, communication, and consultation. Even such trivial things were being nitpicked. Probably, as a result of Johnson reporting anything and everything to the higher-ups, it was decided that I was the culprit. By offering my head to the client, they aimed to sweep this mistake under the rug. I could sense that kind of intention from above. At this point, I have absolutely no options. You can take some time to consider this. Just keep in mind we're expecting a positive response, they said. Stunned by what was essentially a layoff notice, I could hardly react. Just when I was about to be introduced to a potential bride by Mike tomorrow, I received this resignation notice and am on the verge of becoming jobless. In this situation, it's irresponsible to say let's date with marriage in mind. I will apologize to Mike and cancel the introduction for tomorrow. That was what I was thinking. But Mike just brushed it off, saying it didn't matter. Don't look so glum. I'm going to take you to a great place to lift your spirits, he said. There's no way Mike doesn't know about my layoff notice. Before I could refuse, Mike was grinning like a mischievous boy, arm over my shoulder. He practically dragged me to a certain location. It was a world I'd never stepped foot into. A night pool at a certain hotel. It's a popular place and requires reservations. Of course, no one under 18 is allowed. The lighting and music create a different atmosphere than during the day. Today, there's a DJ, so it's more upbeat rather than moody. There's alcohol, so it seems like the perfect place to forget my troubles. I've never been to a place like this before. I was overwhelmed by the sight unfolding before my eyes. Girls in revealing swimsuits were happily walking past. Just watching them was a feast for the eyes. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but just try to enjoy tonight. You can worry about everything else tomorrow. I figured that was his way of offering comfort. I'll think about tomorrow when it comes. I decided to enjoy the time being. Mike quickly disappeared somewhere, having been called over by a girl. The popular guys always have it good, wherever they are. I couldn't muster up the courage to approach any of the girls, let alone be approached by any of them. It was such a waste to just space out by the poolside. I decided to make the most out of the pool itself. I resolved to just swim. I love swimming, and being underwater was soothing. The strange sensation of swimming while listening to music and the sounds of excitement was oddly calming. At that moment, something colorful floated slowly towards me, stopping right before my nose. Picking it up with my fingers, I examined the object that had barely brushed my nose. It was a bikini top, and the moment I realized it, I felt as if my face was on fire. If it was here, that meant its owner was. I started looking around frantically, thinking she must be embarrassed. Then, a woman, only her head visible above the water, came up to me, her face flushed with embarrassment. That's mine. She hesitated, pointing at the bikini top I held in my hand. Oh, sorry. It just floated over. I hurriedly handed her the bikini top. Will you take responsibility for what you've seen? She asked shyly, requesting I shield her back from view while she put her bikini top back on. Without a second thought, I hid her from view. My friend pushed me so hard on the water slide, I went flying. I was so scared. After putting her bikini top back on, she laughed at the memory. Her radiant smile was incredibly charming. Mary, did you find it? A voice, probably her friend's, called out to her from a distance. The woman called Mary answered, I found it, in a voice that carried over the music. Thanks, you saved me. You're quite the gentleman. She poked me in the forehead with a slender finger. Startled, I froze in place, and she chuckled softly. See you, she said, leaving me frozen in place as she swam off towards her friends. I blankly watched her slender, white back as she swam away. Oh, you've already met. That's her. Oh, Mike, what do you mean? Mike, who was squatting by the poolside with a cocktail in one hand, was even cool from a guy's perspective. I was going to introduce you to her. Her name is Mary Newson. He told me that she was his childhood friend. They were from the same hometown, and she was like a little sister to him. She's also very interested in getting married, just like you. You're the same age, so I thought you'd get along. It's better to have someone with similar values, right? Hearing that she was the one I was supposed to meet tomorrow, feelings of happiness and disappointment welled up inside me at the same time. I am a man about to be unemployed. I was certainly not in a situation suitable for marriage. She too has a strong desire to get married. There's no way she would consider me, a guy who's not suited for marriage. I think the best option would have been to turn down Mike right here and now. But I wanted to see her just one more time. She was that captivating. Am I good enough for her? I mean, she's a good friend from your childhood, right? My question was drowned out by the loud music. It didn't seem to reach his ears. The next day, I headed to the designated Chinese restaurant. I was set to have lunch in a private room. It's a famous place for dim sum lunch, and you can't get in without a reservation. I'm grateful for Mike's connections. It seems I arrived first and was led to an empty private room. I was a bit nervous. Nothing has been officially decided about my situation yet. The company is insistent on it being a voluntary resignation. Either way, it's disappointing, but considering Mary's future, I should honestly convey this and decline. That's what I had decided in my heart. Your companion has arrived. I was told this quietly, and I straightened my back. My nervousness peaked. The woman who entered, making the sound of heels, was someone I had never seen before. She gave a small nod to the waiter and sat down on the chair. Watching her flowing movement, I felt she was used to being served. I was introduced by Mike. My name is Mary Newson. She said this and smiled at me. She seemed like a woman with some kind of shadow, and her age was unclear. She seemed young, but also looked older than me. After finishing the drink order and the waiter left the private room, I raised my voice. "Excuse me, you aren't really Mary Newson, are you?" Then the woman who had been smiling gracefully until a moment ago clicked her tongue. "Well, it's obvious. We met last night. Even though it was dark, Mary and I are as different as night and day," she said in a defiant manner, and introduced herself as Jennifer Smith. She claimed to be an old friend from the same hometown as Mike and Mary. It seems that it was her who had called out to Mary last night. Today, she said she had come as a stand-in at Mary's request. She didn't really want to be introduced. Okay, whether you're Mary or not, there's something I have to say. I talked about my imminent voluntary resignation and bowed my head, asking her to pretend this introduction never happened. Jennifer pulled out a portable vaporizer from her bag and slowly exhaled the smoke. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Ignoring my desperate explanations, Jennifer asked for my help. She wanted to talk about two people, Mike and Mary. These two had always been close, but not too close. More than friends but not quite lovers, as they say. The reason their relationship wasn't moving forward was because of Mike. When we all went to the summer fair together, Mike's mother disappeared. Mike has been waiting for her ever since. Apparently, this incident traumatized him, and he's had a hard time trusting women since then. Sure enough, Mike, despite being quite popular, never seemed to stick with one woman. He welcomed all who came and never chased after those who left. That was the nature of Mike's relationships with women. "I want you to help them get together," said Jennifer, looking straight into my eyes. Seeing my hesitation, she slid a business card across the table. The name of the company that had caused a problem the other day was on the card. Her title was Group Owner. I looked at the card and were in shock. "If you help me, we can pretend your mistake never happened." I extended my right hand at this enticing offer. "Understood. Leave it to me." We shook hands, confirming our alliance. I got a full briefing of Jennifer's plan and decided to put it into action right away. Jennifer contacted Mary first. She told Mary, with a hint of panic, "Everything's been exposed." She then convincingly portrayed me as furious and uncontrollable. "Sorry, I'll be right there," I heard from the other end. I called up Mike and gave him a piece of my mind. With a level of assertiveness you wouldn't usually expect from me, I told him how disrespectful it was to use a stand-in. Mike agreed to come right away and the call ended. They seem complicated, but they are actually simple and honest, Jennifer remarked. Before the pair arrived, we hurriedly finished up our dim sum. We didn't want to waste our food. We both laughed as we burned our tongues on the hot dumplings. There was something oddly comfortable about the whole situation. "Your guests have arrived," a waiter announced as the peach buns and mango pudding were being served. Jennifer clicked her tongue in front of the enticing desserts. She must have been really looking forward to them. Wiping her mouth with a napkin, Jennifer gave a mischievous grin and said, "All right, let's start." Jennifer, Are you okay? Mike burst into the private room. Looking at his face, Jennifer brought on the waterworks in less than 5 seconds. I was left dumbstruck by her Oscar-worthy performance. Mary doesn't want to be set up, but it's out now. He said it in such an incredibly angry manner. Crying, Jennifer implored Mike. Behind Mike, Mary stood frozen, her hand over her mouth in surprise. Enough with the mockery, using a stand-in. If you didn't want the introduction, why do you accept it in the first place? You just wanted to laugh at my strong desire to marry, didn't you? With all the acting skills I could muster, I shouted at Mary, who was standing frozen behind Mike. Mary's shoulders jerked in fright. Mike immediately moved to shield Mary with his back. Jennifer, looking down, gave a faint smile. It was a strangely sad smile. "Calm down, man. Don't shout at a woman," Mike retorted. You're no better, Mike. Why would you introduce such a woman using a stand-in because she didn't want to come? Is that the type of woman you thought would suit me? A mean-spirited woman?" I didn't hold back on shouting at Mike either. I've never been this confrontational with anyone in my life. Mike seemed taken aback by my onslaught, unable to find his words. Perhaps because I'm usually so polite, he must have thought I was truly enraged today. "Mary, why don't you want the introduction? You want to get married, right? So why not me? Why do you dislike the introduction so much? It's so mean to use a stand-in." I tried to appeal to Mary, who was looking at me in fear from behind Mike. Her expression began to distort as if she was about to start crying. In the next moment, she bowed so deeply her forehead almost touched her knees. "I'm sorry. I thought that if I agreed to the introduction, Mike would stop it. I only pretended to be desperate for marriage in front of him. I didn't mean to hurt you." Tears spilled from Mary's eyes. "If you're in love with someone, please don't agree to any introductions. It's a nuisance." The moment I took a step towards Mary, Mike grabbed my collar. "Don't keep saying terrible things to Mary. I'm the one who brought up the introduction, not her. She did nothing wrong." I had to stand on tiptoes as tall Mike grabbed my collar. When I glanced at Jennifer, begging for help, she clenched her fist and silently mouthed, "Good luck." I wish she wouldn't make impossible demands. Just when I thought I might pass out from the strain, it was Mary who came to my rescue. "Mike, stop it. It's my fault. I should have refused the introduction when it came up. I thought you were testing me, so I went along with the introduction, intending to cause you trouble." Upon hearing Mary's confession, Mike let go of my collar. I fell back on my butt. "This is a big inconvenience to me, being used as a pawn. Mike, it's about time you gave in." The one who spoke to the bewildered Mike was Jennifer. It's a real nuisance to everyone that those two, obviously in love with each other, keep missing each other. Moreover, they're both so attractive. The fallout is extensive. Spurred by Jennifer's words, Mike reached out and held Mary's hand. Then, in a soft voice, he said, "Is it really okay if it's me?" It was a more juvenile voice than I'd ever heard from the Mike I knew. Mary, with a tearful smile, gently embraced Mike, saying, "Of course it is." It felt like Mike's clock had started ticking again from that summer festival night. "Now, please, go home, you two. We're going to eat some peach dumplings and mango pudding." Jennifer, who had burst into tears just 5 seconds ago, was already sitting back comfortably in her chair, smoking a hookah and crossing her legs. Seeing her like this, Mike quickly realized that this was all an act. Mary seemed to be savoring the happiness of confirming her mutual feelings with Mike, completely oblivious to the farce. "Patrick, sorry for all the trouble." "Thank you," Mike said over his shoulder, hugging Mary as they were about to leave the room. I waved a large hand, sending a silent best of luck as I saw them off. Once they were out of sight, I suddenly felt all the exhaustion flooding over me. "Jennifer, you had it pretty easy," I said with a side glance at Jennifer, who was enjoying her peach dumplings. "Don't be ridiculous. I lost something valuable. I'm the real victim here," Jennifer said with a straight face. Even I, oblivious as I am, could tell that she must have had feelings for Mike. "So, if you feel like consoling me, give me that mango pudding." "No way. I'm exhausted and I need something sweet too." So there we were, two heartbroken individuals, fighting over dessert. Timing is everything in marriage. Just wait, and you'll find someone," Jennifer said as she punched my shoulder on the way out. I believe she was trying to cheer me up. "So, is it okay if I ask you out next time? I know a place that has amazing all-you-can-eat cake." At my words, Jennifer turned back with a surprised look and said, "I'll think about it and get back to you," laughing. Workplace trouble resolved. New potential love interest identified. I was sure that Jennifer would get back to me with a yes. I was absolutely certain of it.